Welcome into the Wilt Fong Whip Around. It is Monday, August 19th, 2024. We had a massive recruiting weekend to unpack with y'all with Steve Wiltfong. Before we get to that, though, make sure you got yourself a subscription to on3.com. Use code FONG1, $1 for 1 month. All the access to all the paywall content from Steve Wiltfong, from Chad Simmons, and all of the tremendous fan sites we have a part of the On3 network. All right, let's bring in Steve Wiltfong and talk about the Vols' massive recruiting weekend. Steve, David Sanders, five-star offensive tackle, gave his pledge to the Vols. What is the impact of Tennessee landing his commitment?
Well, no program has been recruiting high school quarterbacks better than Josh Heupel and company over the last 4 recruiting cycles. Now you need guys to protect them. You look at this Tennessee class that ranks number 6 nationally. The two jewels are David Sanders Jr. and interior offensive lineman Douglas Utu. I envision both these young men being mainstays on the left side of Tennessee's offensive line for years to come. Tennessee has not had a top 10 recruiting class in the On3 industry era dating back to 2017. So the Vols recruiting at an all-time high. I think it all goes back to the win over Alabama 2 years ago, showing where this program could potentially be. This is a recruiting class that could help Tennessee win more games like that more often. It's kind of wild. That season, JD, 2 years ago was the first time Tennessee won double-digit football games since T. Martin was under center. They want to do that annually and beyond. Recruiting wins like David Sanders Jr., flipping linebacker Jaedon Harmon from Alabama. Those are the ways you get it done on Saturdays, ultimately.
I was going to say, flipping 4-star linebacker Jaedon Harmon from Alabama on Sunday, the Vols are like, whoa, okay, now we got some momentum. What went into that flip for Tennessee to get him from the Crimson Tide?
Well, they were working quietly behind the scenes. We've talked on Whip Around before that linebacker is a position of emphasis for Tennessee as they put the finishing touches on this great recruiting class. Ohio State was another program kicking tires on Jaedon Harmon. So to go out and beat the best of the best, to beat Alabama, to beat Ohio State on the trail, that's how you win those games on Saturdays. Jaedon Harmon, a rangy, physical, versatile second-level defender that was highly coveted. Big pickup for Tennessee. And they're still looking for another linebacker this cycle. We'll get into more of that later in the show.
And Steve, I want to ask you a big picture question here when it comes to Tennessee recruiting, because you mentioned who they're getting these wins over. They beat Ohio State for David Sanders, and Georgia was also in the mix, and talk about flipping a guy from Alabama. What does that say about where Tennessee sits right now in the modern college football era with how they're able to recruit with some of these major brands in the sport?
Well, that program or that season 2 years ago showed these prospects as it was early in their recruiting process that Tennessee could win big games, can beat Alabama, can compete for SEC championships under Coach Heupel and this staff. So I think first and foremost, that's the foundation for why Tennessee's having so much success. Recruiting is a relationships game. Tennessee was recruiting David Sanders since he was in the 8th grade. And it's not just relationships with the coaching staff, it's relationships with players. He got a chance to spend a lot of time around players in the locker room. Recruits, George McIntyre was the lead peer recruiter, their quarterback commit on David Sanders Jr., so he felt very comfortable around the guys. And then, JD, you know recruiting is an infrastructure and resources game right now, and Tennessee is one of the programs most well-oiled in that arena as well. So I think when you add all of that up, Tennessee has a top 10 class in the country and a program that's right there in the middle of it for some of the nation's top prospects year in and year out over the last couple cycles.
You mentioned George McIntyre. Even at the Elite Series here in Nashville, he was talking to us when we weren't sitting down with him during an interview, kind of off the air. He's like, yeah, I got to go talk to David, got to try and get in David's ear a little bit here during this event. Well, you mentioned the momentum. What's next for Tennessee on the recruiting trail? Who else do they maybe have their eye on?
Well, cornerback Onis Konanban, he's a 4-star recruit that's going to announce his college decision on Friday. The On3 RPM heavily favors the Vols. He would put the finishing touches on what they've done in the secondary. And then Ty Jackson is the number 1 linebacker in the On3 player rankings. Talked to his father, Samaj, this morning, and he said they may be in Knoxville in October for the rematch in Neyland Stadium when Alabama comes to town as they try and bounce back from that loss 2 years ago. Those are two programs high on his list. Alabama's a mainstay. Tennessee starting to rise up with Ty Jackson. He's going to be at the Florida-Miami game to start the season and go from there. But Tennessee is a program that's starting to make a move with Ty Jackson, and he could be inside Neyland for the big showdown against Alabama later in the year.
Big Mo is in the building on Rocky Top. Now, whenever there's a flip, obviously there's two sides to every flip. So Jaedon Harmon flips from Alabama to Tennessee. The folks on Rocky Top rejoice. What happens now for Alabama? Where do they look to go next?
Well, Ty Jackson's target numero uno for them, and they were recruiting him heavily even when Jaedon Harmon was in the fold. Alabama's one of the front runners for Ty Jackson. They got the last official visit of the summer. He's been there a few times. They love the strength and nutrition of the program. They love the campus. They love the powerhouse and everything that entails in that. And he's going to be back on campus for the game against Georgia later this season. So Alabama, very much one of the front runners for Ty Jackson. That's the guy they covet at the position. I wouldn't be surprised if he's ultimately in a class that currently ranks number 2 nationally by On3.
Now, we got a massive week here on the recruiting trail, Steve. A lot of 5-stars set to make their commitments. Let's start with 5-star safety Jonah Williams. What's the latest buzz you're hearing around his commitment?
Well, a lot of people here down the stretch are pointing towards LSU and Texas as the two programs that are gaining a lot of momentum in the recruitment for Jonah Williams. It's hard for me to turn an eye away from Texas A&M, though. I continue to hear that the dialogue is still as regular and as positive as it's been since the spring with Jonah Williams. So my On3 RPM is on Texas A&M for Jonah Williams, but there's no question that LSU and Texas have made a major move. Texas got the last visit of the summer. There are folks around the recruitment that feel like he ultimately ends up in Austin. And we talked a lot about Tennessee this week. LSU is really hot on the trail as well. They have a chance to recruit perhaps the best defensive back class in the land. They flipped Cade Phillips, a top 100 cornerback from Texas, on Sunday. They already have DJ Pickett in the fold, the number 2 cornerback in the On3 industry, beating out Oregon, Miami, among others for him. And LSU is right here in the thick of it to land Jonah Williams as well. If they do land Jonah Williams, that would be 3 top 10 players and 4 5-stars overall, with quarterback Bryce Underwood, Pickett, Jonah Williams, and then running back Harlem Berry. If LSU's able to pull it off.
Yeah, if that ends up happening, I mean, the Brian Kelly recruitment narrative around, oh, well, I don't know if he's going to recruit when he gets to the SEC. Can he recruit with the big boys? If they land a Jonah Williams, I think that would be tough for the folks in that side of the narrative. Speaking of 5-stars, though, Michael Fasusi, the offensive tackle, he's going to make his commitment here pretty soon. What's the latest with him in terms of where he's trending as of today?
Well, I talked to Michael Fasusi on Sunday evening. There's not a more impressive prospect when you're talking about what they bring on the field and off the field combined. This young man has all the intangibles, no sense of entitlement whatsoever, using the recruiting process as a vehicle to better himself, better his family, talking to all these coaches down the stretch, having Zoom sessions, watching film with them, trying to pick their brains, learn as much as he can about football, because he's announcing his college decision on Wednesday, JD. And that's also the 5-year anniversary of him and his family arriving in the United States from Nigeria. Now, he's got an older brother who's much smaller, who's playing soccer up in Connecticut. And then he's got a younger sister who's playing a lot of sports, but it's a family decision. They all have discussed it together. He knows where he's going. He's waiting to announce it on Wednesday. And there's a lot of buzz behind the scenes. Oklahoma is the program trending. They've always been one of the front runners. Coach Bill Bedenbaugh, his track record of development at the position, his relationship with Brent Venables. He feels very comfortable around those guys, loves being in Norman, been there a bunch of times. Throughout this recruitment, a school that we probably pointed towards the most is Texas. But even when doing that, Oklahoma, there's always been a ton of confidence around OU and their position with Michael Fasusi. Texas A&M, he's watching as much film with Adam Cushing as anybody in the country, Texas A&M's offensive line coach. Duke was the second program to offer Michael Fasusi a scholarship. That's relevant because Mike Elko and Adam Cushing were at Duke when they extended that scholarship. When Mike Elko got the job at Texas A&M, the first high school he stepped foot in when college coaches could go on the road was Louisville High. To see Michael Fasusi, he's felt like a priority. They've done everything they can to land Michael Fasusi. Texas, inside Texas, our insiders over there have saying this recruitment's starting to go away from Texas. But Kyle Flood talked to Michael Fasusi on Sunday night. They're still battling to land the blue chip offensive tackle. If you're asking me where I think he goes, there's a lot of buzz around Oklahoma, but Texas A&M, Texas, they're doing what they can to get this recruitment done as well.
Good old-fashioned dogfight for Michael Fasusi. Again, that commitment is coming Wednesday, so make sure you're locked in. Again, Fong $1 for 1 month. You want to have access to all the early intel. Just telling you, it's worth your 100 cents. We got some more commitments on the horizon here. A.K. Deer, August 20th, 4-star running back. He's making his announcement. What's the latest you're hearing around him?
On 3 RPM's been on Alabama for a while. Still like the Crimson Tide to ultimately add him to the recruiting class that we ranked number 2 nationally.
Tide continue to roll, it sounds like, even if they don't land an AK Deer. But August 23rd, you got 4-star offensive lineman Nick Brooks announcing where he's going to school. What's the latest with him?
Yeah, on 3 RPM is on the Texas Longhorns. Right now, if they lose Fasusi, Nick Brooks would be a nice addition to a program that's really done a fantastic job of recruiting offensive line and prioritizing it since Steve Sarkisian and his staff was hired. It's one of the reasons why you're seeing Texas play championship caliber football. I think that resonates with Nick Brooks. USC still a dangerous program in this recruitment. They're doing everything they can to garner late momentum with Nick Brooks. He's still having communication with the Trojans. So USC a dark horse for him. Texas is the on 3 RPM.
And then August 25th, you got 4-star wide receiver Nashawn Montgomery out of Miami Central. What's the buzz around his recruitment right now?
Really like where Florida stands. Florida putting together one of the sneaky good receiver recruiting classes in the country with Josh Moore and Vernell Brown III already in the fold. I think it's lining up nicely for Nashawn Montgomery to join them. He also is strongly considered Penn State, but all the buzz is around Florida.
Now, again, if you have not yet gotten your membership, $1 using Fong 1, I'm telling you, it's worth the price of admission because you put in a prediction for a certain 2026 quarterback, 4-star caliber, to maybe end up at Texas A&M. What's the latest there?
Yeah, 9 of the 10 2020 top 26 quarterbacks have already announced their college decision, a couple more in the top 15. Helaman is one of the most coveted players still out there at the position. He is going to be at the Texas A&M Notre Dame game to open the season. I think coming into the visit, the Aggies are the program setting the pace. His conversations with Colin Klein and that staff, how comfortable he feels in College Station, how much of a priority Texas A&M has made him feel. I think that the Aggies are the one to beat in my on 3 RPM reflects that. And I wouldn't be surprised if after a couple visits this fall, Washington's the other program that's super high on his list. He wants to visit Washington for a game. I wouldn't be surprised if he made his college decision. Texas A&M, the leader. Washington, one of the programs that could change that.
For Texas A&M to go into the state of Utah and land a 4-star quarterback in Helaman Kasuga, that would be just speak again to the national brand that Texas A&M has already continued to emphasize that they are. Aiden Anding is a cornerback in the 2025 class right now trending towards LSU. Steve, what's the latest there?
Yeah, logged an on 3 RPM in favor of the Tigers after talking to Aiden Anding on Sunday. He's down to Arkansas, LSU, and Texas. But I just think, as he nears his college decision, the opportunity to stay in the boot, to play for Corey Raymond, the DBU tradition, knowing the guys in the locker room, the resources LSU has, in-state tradition. I like the way that's lining up for the Tigers.
One more thought on LSU here for you, Steve. Why do they recruit the defensive back position so well? Like you mentioned Corey Raymond, you mentioned the DBU label that they are seemingly always in the conversation for whenever that discussion arises. Is it that or other factors that end up making them such a force when it comes to being a contention for a lot of these high-profile defensive backs?
Well, in addition to the reasons that you just pointed towards with Corey Raymond and all of that, how comfortable these guys feel when they get to Baton Rouge. I mean, DJ Pickett felt at home whenever he was on LSU's campus, just liked the vibe. I've heard prospects mention multiple times how they like the diversity around LSU's campus within their student body. I think that's another reason, why they do a good job of just recruiting top to bottom. I mean, when you have the number 3 recruiting class in the country, you're recruiting every position well. Brian Kelly-led staffs always recruit offensive line well. LSU has one of the top 4 or 5 offensive line classes in the country this cycle. They have the number 1 quarterback in the land in the fold. It's going to end up being a good receiver class. They have the number 1 running back in America committed. Now they're looking at bringing in what's probably going to have a good chance of ending up being one of the best defensive back classes, if not the best defensive back class in the country, depending on what Jonah Williams does this weekend.
A lot on the table for the Tigers. It's never too early to look ahead, is it, Steve? The new 2027 rankings came out for us. Anything to highlight there?
Yeah, let's talk about a couple things. Make sure you get over to On3. Charles Power, Cody Belair poured a lot of time into ranking the top 100 recruits in the 2027 class. Topping that list is LaDamian Guyton. He is an edge rusher from Savannah, Georgia Christian Prep High. He got his first offer from Georgia when he was in the 8th grade. Warren Brinson, one of the bell cows on Georgia's offensive line this year, he's from Savannah. He was at Christian Prep a couple springs ago. Guyton was an 8th grader that came to spring practice, and he was cooking the varsity offensive tackles. Warren Brinson was videotaping it, sent that to Coach Chidera Uzo-Daribe and the Bulldog staff. They had him in camp that summer. He earned his scholarship offer, and the Bulldogs are getting a head start in this recruitment. They look like they're the yearly favorite, but Alabama's a place he looks forward to getting to. Tennessee is another program to watch, but he's already a blue chipper here and from the best of the best. And then quarterbacks. Let's talk some quarterbacks here in this 2026 class or 2027 class, because in 2026, again, 9 of the top 10 passers are off the board. So by this time next year, we could have 9 of the top 10 quarterbacks in this 2027 class off the board. These guys are going to be household names before we know it. Elijah Haven from Louisiana is the number 1 ranked quarterback in the country. He's from Baton Rouge. He's been to Florida a few times already. So we've seen Florida land arguably a top signal caller in the country. They got DJ Lagway on the roster. They'll be looking for his heir apparent in a couple cycles. Maybe it's Elijah Haven, depending on how Billy Napier and company look. But LSU certainly up there. Baylor's doing a good early job for him. They want to get to Texas A&M and Auburn this year. A quarterback that might set off the dominoes in that 2027 class is Brady Edmonds from Huntington Beach, California. He's the number 2 quarterback in the 2027 rankings. He's got some visits locked in. He's going to be at UCLA for the Oregon game on September 28th. He'll be at USC on October 12th. He's got a return to Texas set for October 19th. Texas is one of the favorites. Ohio State on October 26th. They're also one of the favorites. Michigan, working with my colleague Chad Simmons, and we like Michigan early in that top 3. Notre Dame and Penn State are a couple other defenders, but he's been able to make the rounds, get to a lot of places. Perhaps Brady Edmonds is the guy that gets those dominoes rolling in 2027. We know they're going to go quick.
It's all happening. Again, we're talking 2026, talking 2027. Have a ton of commitments on deck for this week. Y'all, make sure you are subscribed right here to the On3 Recruits channel. You got the Wiltfong Whip around here with Steve Wiltfong. You got the Inside Scoop with Josh Newberg, 5-Star Flex with Phillip Dukes. Make sure you're dialed in right here, recruiting year round. Steve, thanks so much for dropping all the intel and all the knowledge on us. It's going to be a big week in recruiting. Thanks for getting us in the know.
Yep, see y'all on Thursday.
Sweet.